Welcome to History Literacy Ready, Unit 1, Lesson 2, Gateway Activities, Civil Rights. In this lesson, students are going to analyze a group of photographs, and they're going to use the National Archives and Records Administration process for analyzing those. They're also going to use some information about the context and the source of the photographs in their analysis. They will begin a timeline of the Civil Rights Movement, and they will work on those terms that they were introduced to in the first lesson, sourcing, contextualization, and corroboration, and add a new term, chronology. So why do we call it a gateway activity? Well, a gateway activity is meant to provide interest in the unit and get students thinking about some of the issues involved in the unit. And so we expect that the photographs are going to do that. They're going to pique students' interest in the civil rights movement and start them thinking about some of the issues. The photographs are considered part of the historical record, and historians use these to help them make interpretations of the past. So this activity actually does get students engaged in the process of historiography and thinking like a historian. Before you start this lesson, it would be a very good idea to preview the photographs, the National Archives procedures for analyzing photographs, and the context source information on your own so that you can be more familiar with it and help your students if they have questions. To prepare for the lesson, students are going to think about the role photographs play in our understanding of the past. Now, this may seem a little out of left field if they don't have a particular photograph to look at to think about what that means for the past. So you might want to use one of the photographs in this lesson as a spur to students' thinking. Or you could do something like bring in a photograph from your past to make it a little more personal and talk about that, what that photograph, what students can infer from that photograph about your past in looking at that photograph. If you had a lot of time, you could have students bring in their own photographs from the past and share with each other and come to some inferences about them. But you may not have that time. In the second activity, they're learning to analyze the photographs. Now, we're using the National Archives procedures for analyzing photographs, and you should have read those. You might want to model. You also want to emphasize that photographs are considered primary source documents because they are from the time period and they do tell particular perspectives about the past. So use that terminology when you're talking about the pictures. Also, you want to have students to look at the source and context information, and when you do that, you want to use the term, the words sourcing and contextualization, because that'll get students used to those words that they're going to be using again and again in the rest of the unit. So what students are going to do is you're going to model the activity. Students are going to practice one as a whole group, and then you're going to put them in groups and let them work together to analyze a couple of photographs. You want to think about, when you're organizing students into groups, how you can be strategic about it, because you want to make your group work as productive as possible. So if you know students who work well together, you know students who don't work well together, then use that information to get your groups together. If you think your students are fine picking your own groups, that's okay, but it's your decision. You need to be thinking about what's going to be the most beneficial to them in terms of their learning. It's also important to have really clear goals. They're going to analyze 2 photographs, and they're going to have to be able to explain their analysis to others. So you want to make sure that those goals are clear so that they know what they're doing in the groups. You also want to set standards for quality. So go back to your model, emphasize the modeling that you did, and the group practice you did and the feedback you gave them, and show them the kind of thinking and level analysis that they should achieve. Remember too that it's important to have a clear time frame, not too much time, or they'll go off task, and you want just enough time to have them be able to finish their work if they're working the entire time. As the groups are working, monitor progress and make adjustments as necessary in order to maintain a level of quality. For instance, if you walk around and you see that students are really missing something big about their analysis, that it's too superficial, you want to stop them, take them back to your model, show them what you expect, and then get them back to work. After they have analyzed the photographs, you're going to have them think about some questions that are going to be the hallmarks of this unit going forward. And these 3 questions are: what concepts of freedom and liberty are addressed? What tactics are used? What reactions do you have? You want students to reflect on freedom and liberty because they're going to do that throughout the unit. You want to make sure that they understand those concepts, what they mean, and how they might relate to the photographs that they're looking at. And that's actually pretty obvious, so that should be a fairly easy discussion. The discussion about tactics might be something new to them, because tactics are what historical actors use to attain goals and are things that historians study. So they study what actors in history have goals about and how they reach those goals and whether they're successful or not. In Activity 5, they're going to create a timeline. Now they're going to do this without a lot of background information. So they can look at the photographs and try to put those in chronological order, and they can do that because there is some information about the context. And then they can use also what they know from prior knowledge to begin a timeline. The timeline is there to introduce concepts of chronology and significance. So chronology, how things move across time. Things that are close together in time may be causative of other things, but they may not be. And so that's just the movement across time or change across time is something that historians study. Even if they aren't paying attention to cause and effect, they do pay attention to how things change across time. And that's one of the things you're going to be doing in this unit. And because you have to make some determinations of significance when you make a timeline, you can't put everything in it, so you have to think about, well, what are the important things and why is it important? It does help students begin to think about what it means for an event to be significant. This timeline can be individual because there's a timeline, an individual timeline, and there's student academic notebooks, but it can also be a class effort. You can make a timeline, a huge timeline at the front of the class, and always involve students in that timeline if that's what you'd like to do. And again, remember, chronology doesn't imply causality, but historians do look at chronology, and sometimes that does help them to determine causation. If things are too far removed in terms of their chronological sequence, then it may be that they are not causative in nature. In Activity 6, students are going to be returning to that vocabulary about the discipline that they've been learning. So you're asking them to define sourcing, contextualization, primary source documents, secondary source documents, and chronology, the new term that you added in this lesson. You'll be able to tell from students' answers how well they're understanding these terms, and then you can use that information to reinforce those terms in later lessons.